Hi, I'm Phil Harbottle, and this is my 11th video discussing 1950s British science fiction paperbacks. Now, we've already seen that Curtis Warren were one of the worst publishers in an attempt to establish science fiction in Britain, but they weren't alone in their dreadful efforts. One of the worst offenders was Edwin Self. Now, Edwin Self had been the editor at Curtis Warren at the time that they produced their first batch of rubbish. He'd been responsible, and afterwards he'd quit his job in September 1950 in order to set up his own publishing company, Edwin Self. He sent a circular letter to his former authors at Curtis Warren. The letter, dated September the 6th, 1950, read, "Dear Sir, I have immediate requirements both for my own publishing company and for companies with whom I am connected for 40,000 word manuscripts which may come under the following general headings: sex gangster stories, science fiction stories, westerns. If you have any manuscripts of this nature available for placing, I should appreciate an opportunity of considering them, and I could promise you a quick decision as to suitability for my purposes." Now, Self duly included science fiction in his lists, at first written by Curtis Warren regulars Dennis Hughes as George Sheldon Brown and John Jennison as Edgar Rees Kennedy, and who later used the George Sheldon Brown name but spelt it Brown with an E, whether by accident or design. Now, the two Hughes novels, Destination Mars and Planetoid Peril in particular, were atrociously ill-written space opera. Notice the deliberate concoction of the names to resonate with those appearing from rival publishers, i.e. Roy Sheldon and Edgar Rice Burroughs. Self, like many other publishers, turned to other areas in the quest to titillate the audience for sex gangster novels, with an increasing number of French-flavoured novels, with bylines like René Laroche and Jean-Paul Vallat. Now, most of these were claimed to be translations from the French, but only a few of them were, if any. One of the main translators credited was Mark Lavelle, but this was actually a pseudonym of a British author, Lyle Willis, who was also commissioned to supply a couple of wretched science fiction novels as Earl Van Loden, his personal pen name. There was Curse of Planet Cuz and Voyage into Space. These titles were atrocious. The continental angle was merely a cynical camouflage for a deliberate attempt on the part of these publishers to push sex fiction and pornography, for which they thought there was a market. Authors were deliberately commissioned to write unsavory material. Fittingly, Self would eventually find himself serving a 9-month jail sentence, and he was not the only mushroom publisher to be jailed. Amongst the writers receiving heavy fines was Lyle Willis, who was Earl Van Loden. If I'd been the magistrate passing the sentence, because they published Curse of Planet Cuz, I'd have doubled that sentence. Now then, what are we to make of these wretched books? Destination Mars was an awful space opera, as was Planetoid Peril, both by Dennis Hughes, who had yet to find his feet in an unfamiliar medium. At least he would get better later, a lot better. The Mystery Planet and Conquest of Space by John Jennison, writing as Edgar Rees Kennedy, were marginally better, but really the only thing going for them is that they had covers by Ron Turner and Terry Maloney. Curse of Planet Cuz by Earl Van Loden was insultingly bad. It was atrociously written, with the spaceman characters talking in a hideous American cowboy accent, straight out of Western B-movies, with an illogical plot that was sheer fairy tale rather than scientific, with six-legged cretinous insect men from Jupiter, murderous dog men from Planet Cuz, dragons, and a beautiful princess. It was one of the worst novels of all time. The same author's voyage into space was only a little better, and The Yellow Planet was one of Jennison's poorer stories. But the superb Ron Turner covers have probably made these awful books collectible today. If mad collectors and completists feel that they must have this series because of the covers, on their own heads be it. But whatever you do, don't try to read them. You have been warned.